Just take one hit. Don't you want to be cool?
Gather round everyone. The show's about to begin.
Turn on, tune in, drop out, this show's amazing. It's Super Lemon Haze, you know them boys always blazing. Put one in the air, fill your glass and get to raising. Kirkman praising, school flag waving. Chopping up the topics is the choking on some chronic. Scott and Eric breaking it down like 21st century prophets. Eyes glazed and minds dazed, it's knowledge they convey. Roll up and consume the Super Lemon Haze.
Super Lemon Haze.
Going to ask you several questions.
Super Lemon Haze.
How do you feel?
I feel like a slice of butter melting on top of a big old pile of flapjacks. Yeah.
Cynthia, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly.
Excellent. You too. How's it going?
It's going great. How about yourself?
I'm good. We just came back from dinner. So I'm not sure if you guys have gone and, sort of tested the waters and did some dining, but we're starting to branch out a little bit now. So we have a pub down the street that took over like a garage spot, and they put all this outdoor seating and lights. So it's kind of nice. So we just wheeled up, had a burger, a beer, and then just came back. So we're good.
Awesome. Yeah, we venture out, not necessarily out to eat at restaurants, but we venture out quite a bit with the family, make sure the kids get their vitamin D, good sunlight, especially lately. So yeah.
Yeah, you got a beautiful family, by the way. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And they are awesome. Every one of them. I was going to start talking about the children, but everyone.
Right. So how big of a household? How crowded is it over there?
It's not crowded. So what you see, we have the three little ones, and then and then us. So
yeah,
they're fine. They like to be in each other's face, and when not. Our middle one, he likes to sometimes go off and do his own independent work and thinking and exploration. But other than that, you'll constantly find the youngest crawling on top of the oldest and so forth. So yeah. Do
they do a good job being independent of you guys? Do they play independently? Do they stay out of your way, or is it constant energy? Because we've got three young ones too. So we're 3 under 10 years old, but our youngest is 1. So it's a lot of work over here.
Yeah. So our youngest is 1 also. We do so much as a family, and then if they want to, I've watched them play or learn or explore independently. I think our dynamic is supportive of interaction. It's not really, we don't necessarily force like, okay, I need you to leave us alone, or I need, we do quite a bit with the balance.
Yeah, that's good. How are you guys handling the situation with the education right now? Are you guys doing a lot of just learning from home and doing your own curriculum, or how are you handling that?
Well, so we've always taken hold and responsibility of teaching our children.
Beautiful.
Both Moore and myself, we are hardcore educators. We don't rely on the system or anyone else to have that authority over our children's thinking. So if anything, this time period has really pressed upon other folks why it's important to be involved in your children's education, because if ever an emergency and you're sitting there spinning your wheels trying to figure out, what do I do? What does my child know? What should they know? That's not the space that we're in at all. So it's business as usual for us.
That's good. We're in a tough spot. My wife and I both work full times, but we don't really have the educational background. So, when we got thrown into doing a lot of the remote learning, we had to learn very fast. I mean, like, honestly, we're talking like, I don't know how to do math. I mean, 10-year-old math to me is it's like rocket science, and math is a big part of my life in terms of my career. So, and I'm like, how are they teaching you how to do this? Like fractions. And I'm like, so it's like relearning all that stuff. So it was interesting for us for the first couple of months. I would say we're definitely a little bit more prepared coming into the fall. Right now they're starting to roll out what the plan looks like for the elementary schools.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like it's going to be mostly like this hybrid thing, which is pretty much what we predicted. It's going to be kind of in, you know, part of the week in school, and then the rest of it's going to be homeschooled. So we're prepared this time around. I think it's just the whole thing for us is really, you know, because the kids are eventually going to be graduating into like the middle school and then high school. So we're like, how much of this is going to have an impact? And I think it's actually they're going to look back, and I mean, I don't think they're missing anything. I mean, at least the kids, our kids' age, I don't think they're missing much. I know there's some older kids. A lot of our neighborhood has some teenagers, and I know they're finding, a lot of those parents are finding it hard to fill the time for them, because a lot of them they have the tolerance and the patience to sit in front of the computer for a couple hours a day. But after that, after their online learning is over, they're just going nuts. So
yeah, and I think it's also how you define learning. So,
yeah,
we, even looking at Common Core curriculum and expectations and so forth, we subscribe to our children really understanding concepts and not following and regurgitating scripts that you often find with the school system. So, homeschooling and so forth, we embrace it fully because it allows us to immerse our children in a way of learning that will carry them through life. And it's not just, okay, I check this off, I'm moving on to the next grade type of thing. So completely different perspective than what they're trying to push out there, and the dilemma that a lot of folks are facing.
Yeah. I my mom we were fortunate enough to have my mom home with us, while my father worked. So, I had that perspective of what it was like to be, because every day is a lesson, right? Even when you're not learning, you're learning.
Yeah.
And I wonder, is it because, we're in this sort of like keep up with the Joneses rat race kind of thing where, we're trying to like afford the next. I mean, that's just, it's unfortunate, but I feel like you get into that trap, like my wife and I both have, the advanced degrees. So like, we're sort of like, we were trained and pushed at a very young age to continue to excel and exceed. And our priorities are sometimes placed in the wrong place. We're thinking, what career level can you reach, or what salary can you reach? And you forget sometimes that, some of that stuff is never going to matter. You can have all the wealth in the world, but if you're not focusing on your inner circle and with your family, and especially your kids, and spending time with them, all this is a waste of time and energy. So,
right. Or you get to the point where you're an adult, and that's when you're trying to figure out who you are. You're trying to understand self, as opposed to learning that all along. So,
yeah, but I think that's been the biggest learning, I think, for us, has been, we've never spent this much time together. And we've also never spent this much time together with our family. I mean, we had, because for a while, her mom's almost in her 70s. She's got some complications, and we basically invited her to live with us. Because of our young one, and we didn't have the opportunity to, we had someone that was going to help us full time, but that obviously changed once the COVID thing happened. So we asked our mother to help us out with full-time care, and that was the best decision we've ever made. We were hesitant to do it at first because we're like, this is your mom. Like, things are great when things are great, and then things sometimes can get really tough. But that's, this has been sort of the way that our generation, I mean, at least our culture, our generation, and mine, I'm not speaking for yours, but mine.
Yeah, because I was going to say slightly different.
No, I don't mind. I'm not speaking for you. I'm just saying for us, it's just, it's like your parents should stay in their own homes by themselves, living independently. And we continue just to sort of like, it's crazy. I mean, that's not where my head is at, but unfortunately, our parents have that mentality. Oh, you don't have to take care of me. Oh, I don't have to live with you, even though we have the space. It's like, oh, I can live on my own. And it's almost like they're forced to feel they need that independence, where it's like, dude, just live with us. And so it actually took a little bit of convincing on both sides. Is it going to work for us? Yes, it's going to work for us. Everything makes sense. Check all the boxes. And we're going to get some extra help. It keeps everyone safe. It keeps our circle together. We're not exposing each other once we're all together. We're not going back and forth. And then for my mother-in-law, it was just like, what, this is the only opportunity I'm going to have to be able to live with my grandkid. She obviously raised her kids, but this is her grandchild that she's now going to be living with for a couple of months. And so that was awesome. And we learned a lot there. I think we learned a lot about values. We learned a lot about how important it is to stay together. I mean, I don't know, sometimes, and I think that's the problem with at least the way that we were brought up. It's like, wish things were a little bit different. You know, and that's as parents, I guess you make those decisions. You can change the patterns. I was actually very impressed with your education. You know, you know, you know, you disclosed where you went to school
Right.
On the report. So that's a fantastic university. So you went to Georgetown,
I always
right?
wanted to go to Georgetown. I think
What?
sixth grade, I said I wanted to go there.
And you're Boston bred, right? You're from
Born
Boston.
and
Yeah.
raised here in Massachusetts. I have to say Massachusetts, Boston up until middle school, and then we moved to the South Shore. And then once I turned 18, I was out. I was gone. My parents wanted me to stay local. They wanted me to stay local here, and I was just not interested. And I think literally for college, I applied to Georgetown and Columbia, and that was it.
Yeah. So what about Georgetown did you love so much?
DC, Washington, DC. And
just the magic of it, all the history, the monuments,
So my father is very big into politics. And so he was always talking about politics, always talking about presidential elections, always talking about presidents, international politics, and so forth. And although when I entered in pre-med, and I was in the pre-med route, it just made sense to be in that environment, in the DC environment, to pursue that. And then I was an EMT my freshman year, and I was just like, yeah, I can't deal with other people's blood. And I actually worked at for 3.5 years in high school. I worked here in Massachusetts at Tufts University doing research as well. At the hospital down. Why am I blanking out on the name of the hospital?
New England
Medical Center. Yes. I should know this because one of my children were born there. But anyway,
it's okay.
So I worked there for 3.5 years, and I was like, yes, medicine. And then I got to deal with blood and vomit, and it was other people. Like,
well, you know, the EMT though is like, that's hardcore. You know, I mean, you know, I wonder if you had a very different first experience in the medical industry, more in maybe like a recovery rehab, not necessarily like in the emergency medicine arena. You're like on the front lines as an EMT.
I had a lot of lab experience. I also worked at the Georgetown's medical center in their lab department. Interestingly enough, the doctor I worked with, he's coming out with a vaccine for COVID. Cool. They just announced it. I guess I don't know who he's partnered with, but that's pretty big. So
nice.
Yeah, in terms of so education's really, really big in my family, and culturally, I don't know if you've heard me share that my parents are from Haiti, and they came here when they were teenagers, and my dad came here for college, and so education is something that they place a high premium on. So it was a no-brainer in terms of, and I love learning. So excelling in school. When I went to after Georgetown, I did go on and get my master's degree. I don't think I shared it in the report, but I was part of the Teach for America program.
I think you said something. Yeah.
Okay. So
you said something about master's degree. Yeah.
Yeah. In educational leadership and administration. And technology integration of some, I don't even remember the name.
they always put a bunch of letters and numbers and names.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I went back to graduate school for public health. I was also on a pre-med path.
Yeah.
And it was more the medical system that turned me off, because I did a lot of internships, and I was also in research, and I think a lot of the physicians turned me off from going into medical school. So I did the whole public health route. I went to work in populations, and I've loved it ever since. And I'm still in that field. So doing something a little bit different than when I started in the clinic, but right now I'm still sort of studying the same thing. So how did you switch then from medicine into education? And I'm assuming that happened in your undergraduate.
Well, in undergrad, I did political science, but I also worked for the Center for Social Justice. And I've always been a proponent of education, just stemming from my parents and so forth. So, and I think I have a natural proclivity to want to teach any information that I have or share that information. And so while I was working at the center, the Teach for America was on campus recruiting. And there were a couple of alum who I remember and I had great esteem for. And they said, you could come do Teach for America. Don't worry, you can continue on whatever path you want to afterwards, but at least you get to give back. And that call for justice and the ability to give back really appealed to me. So I did that, and it placed
like a 2-year thing, a 2-year program.
It is. I don't talk about it too much because now, with having better understanding of everything that's happening in the world, how the inequities that we see across all industries, the systemic racism, white supremacy, however you want to approach it, the systemic injustices that are interwoven into every system. I actually have, I think the 2-year service it's a disservice. I didn't get into my stroke in terms of being a phenomenal educator until I hit maybe about 4th or 5th year. And so I think if I were to launch a program, or if I were given the opportunity, I would modify it, because as smart, intelligent, talented, passionate, and caring as I know I am, and a lot of my peers were, for our students to see that this is the best that the system had to offer. I think we could structure it a lot.
Yeah.
And
so did you go abroad with that program, or did you stay locally?
I was in Atlanta.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was in Atlanta, someplace I never thought I'd visit. I'd never go to Georgia. I think all of the stigma of the South, I think I was going to stay clear of the South, but the universe has great plans, and the South set up expanded my horizons significantly.
So who are you teaching? Who are you teaching? Like who are the students? What level?
Lead classrooms for 2nd and 3rd grade, but I taught everything from kindergarten to 5th, and then I also provide educational services for middle school, and some of my middle schoolers remain in contact with me all throughout high school, even to college. So teaching everyone.
Yeah.
And now I'm teaching adults.
I know. Well, so I would say, I mean, there's a lot of Mar that I love about you guys, but there's also a lot of you, and that's been like, I think for me, when I found, I think it was the connection that I have with Rev Clinics, who hooked me up, I think, with Mar initially. He gave me an email address, and we started communicating. He started sending me some information, but it wasn't really until I found your videos that I was like, man, these guys are awesome. And
thank you. We appreciate that.
I think what I love about it is that it's I mean, because being an educator myself and having that public health background, I immediately gravitated to the way that you were speaking. Like, I was really absorbing all the information, but then I also was heavily entertained by Mar and his energy. And I thought like the sort of the yin and the yang between you two is just like phenomenal. Like I love like a little bit of the banter. I love, because he's so he's like, and I'm like, he's like a hard dude, like I know, like he's posted all those, he's got all these videos going on now, and he's like karate chopping this, and he's like wrestling that. And I love when you call him Hun, I feel like he just like, he comes down like 10 levels, and I'm like, there it is. like it's you remind me a lot about my relationship with my wife, which is why I also think it's very fun to watch you guys do it.
Yeah, we there's definitely something cosmic between us. We're born 7 days apart to the minute.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and definitely a yin and yang. A lot of time folks meet us and they're just like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean they get it or they don't get it?
They're shocked. Usually the first is they're kind of surprised, because it's just kind of the yin and yang,
Yeah.
But I think we have grown so much over the years. Now we start to mirror each other in a lot of ways, but we've also learned tremendously from each other in terms of, he's from New York, and New Yorkers, you're from Massachusetts, correct?
No, I'm a Philly guy. So I'm wondering,
I think you get it too. You look at New York, and New York has this whole this whole attitude and perception. You have a perception of them, and then you meet someone, and you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. No, so you say you're an educator now for adults. So is that what you mean? Like you're educating people regarding the whole cannabis stuff, or are you doing
bringing this information to the forefront? And to be honest, I did it beforehand. I did a lot of facilitation for the school districts in terms of teaching them different strategies on engaging, again, through the educational leadership and technology piece. This was we're knocking at 15 years ago. So folks were
Mm.
still learning how to integrate technology, whether it was the computer or any type of, back then Leapfrog was just emerging.
Right.
And so showing how they could use that in the classroom and demonstrate and still manage the classroom and how it was actually beneficial, specifically if they had struggles with management. So I did a lot of that as well. And
Yeah.
moving forward to now, I don't know if more shared. So outside of this, we do a lot in real estate. I do a lot of educating in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we do in terms of empowering communities, we find a lot of folks who want to be first-time home buyers or want to position themselves to enter into the market to purchase a home. And not only do we facilitate that, but then we also show them that you can go a little bit further and get into some investing. We find a lot of people, I speak a lot about the Haitian community because
Mm-hmm.
of my family's background, but
Mm-hmm.
folks who have worked really, really hard to save their money and position themselves. And we're like, you can do a lot more with this. And so we spend quite a bit of time on educating in that
Mm-hmm.
capacity as well. I don't think you'll find me in a space where I'm not sharing information or some type of knowledge that I have.
Yeah.
And here it is with the cannabis space, we entered for the business side of things. This is more like Moore's baby, and I was just like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this, you've loved, sometimes he'll be talking like, oh my gosh, I love her so much. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
This is early on, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, okay, your obsession and love with marijuana is a
Yeah.
bit wrong. Oh my God.
That definitely came through in the time that we spent together. I could feel it. He talks about it like it's almost like a child, It's like he has
Or
a special
another
place.
girlfriend.
Yeah, or that. I was gonna say that, but I didn't want to get in trouble, But he
No,
definitely
not
has
at
a
all.
special place in his
We're
heart.
very open. We're very, there's so many areas that we're very open and folks are just like, wow, you guys are kind of different. We
Yeah.
just see, we see the world in ways that is not necessarily mainstream. And we are comfortable in talking about that,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, marijuana, that's his other baby. I mean, he spends his wonderful time with her, and if he's
Yeah.
upset with me, I'm like, why don't you go talk to your other girl?
He said that actually. He's like, yeah, sometimes my family's like, you need to go smoke. Like,
Yes, basically.
yeah.
Basically.
So what you're saying basically is you were heavily into the education. You still are. So the cannabis piece was more just as another investment, right? So it was you just trying to learn a new industry, utilize some of Mar's background and some of Mar's experience, and getting into this. And
leverage that. And we both have entrepreneurial spirits, so we're just like, oh wow, this is awesome. It's legal now we can do, I mean, even when it was decriminalized, he was operating as a caregiver, and we were still dealing with the law, enforcement and discrimination. It was atrocious.
Yeah.
And
was that when he got set up? He was talking about that, and
mm-hmm.
and he was a caregiver at the time, right?
Correct. And so, and this is when they talk about, like, there are certain actions that folks are like, oh, this is to remedy that. And I'm like, wait a minute, that does nothing for me and the family and everything that we suffered over. And it was pure discrimination, and so but fast forward to when this became legal and the CCC publicized the opportunity to join the Economic and Power Equity Program. We signed on for that. It made sense. It aligned with a lot of what our family does already. And great, moving forward, reaching out to folks. Now, folks are just still skeptical because they're just like, wait, legal? No, we still know people that are getting that are being criminalized for this or having run-ins with the law, and they're still calling them out for just possession here in Massachusetts. So then when we had a couple of instances where dealing with investors, there was pushback, and the pushback came from information they were actually getting from the media or from the CCC directly or from their CCC's vendors. And so
what kind of information were they hearing at that time?
Well, that it wasn't legal to invest.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
With economic empowerment applicants. And we were just like, wait, no, that's not true. How do they expect people to get in? And that was one of the issues that I brought up when in January, I don't know if you were able to catch this, but in January of this year, the Cannabis Control Commission held a forum, and they invited applicants, people who had open applications with the commission, to come in and speak about some of the challenges that they were facing.
I think that's like your initial videos, right? I think that's
Yes.
on your Mass Mother Mary. I think that's the first 2, right, or 3 that are on there.
It most likely would be.
Yeah, I watched them. There's like a white table. You guys are sitting facing.
Yes.
Yeah. I watched that.
Correct.
Yep.
So that was the first time we were like, okay, great. They're giving us this opportunity to come voice, because, you know, prior to that, there were some other people who had said they were trying to be heard and they were not being heard. And so finally the commission said, okay, let's give folks an opportunity to be heard. We went there, we participated in that. And it was, I also come from right before, I guess, the last agency that I worked for in terms of the public sector was the Department of Education here in Massachusetts, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE. And I know how, you know, departments work. Now, this one is a new agency, so I kind of give them a little bit of leeway and I look at them a little bit differently. And so I'm just like, oh, this is great. They're looking for feedback directly from the people. Let's see, you know, I asked directly to the chair, when will I hear back from you? And he said, oh, well, we'll make it an effort to respond back. We didn't hear back.
Can I stop you for a second? So what exactly, so each of you, were you each tasked to say something to the CCC about anything particular, or you guys just kind of came with whatever it is that you wanted to say to them?
There was no structure. There was no structure to it, other than you were given, I don't know if it was 3 minutes or 6 minutes. Yeah. 3 minutes to speak, and you could speak on anything that you wanted to. If you the CCC on their YouTube channel, they do have more, and even on Facebook, they have the lengthier videos where you can see other folks. So everyone was up there speaking about whatever issue they were having, everything from, I'm about to lose my building, to, hey, you said you were going to help us, I can't get my application in, no one is responding to calls. So it was everything under the sun. However, what they did do with this is they structured it so that economic empowerment and social equity, which are the 2 equity people, they got to speak first. I'm not going to belabor the point there, because what's really important is the aftermath, the response.
So you asked her a response, and
right, the response came in a generic FAQ that was issued about 2.5 or 3 months later. And during that time period, we had been trying to reach out. Moore had tried to reach out to the social justice chair, and the response started to get alarming. Like, wait a minute. We came to you, we told you we are the very people that you said that you are charged and mandated to support, promote, and encourage participation. We've done half the work. We've met you halfway and we've shared with you, and you're not doing your part. You're actually, you're avoiding calls, blocking people, you ignoring. And so at that point, I started to dig, and then I started showing him. I said, hey, there's a lot of information online about what they're supposed to be doing. And so we started reading that together. And this is what birthed the first marijuana social equity report, because of all the pushback that we had received. And we're just like, wait a minute, this isn't making sense. And there were other things that emerged, and we were just like, wait, we're not going to put this out right now. Let's just do an evaluation of what we see. And of course, we're solutions oriented. So we were constructed in terms of how we presented this information. I mean, we could have done it like an op-ed piece and just really attack them and blast them and say, you're not doing the job, you don't care, etc. But, you know, we highlighted the points that we thought were most striking, offered recommendation solutions that aligned with their authority, and then, you know, gave some context as to why it is that we were saying these things. And nothing, no response.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So, how did you try to deliver to them by hand? Did you just send them emails with the attachment? How did you try to deliver to them to make sure that it was in their face?
We emailed it out to whoever's contact information that we could find online. We sent it out. The report was dropped in the middle of COVID. So there was not bringing anything to anyone physically. That wasn't going to happen. And we didn't have the opportunity where they had the monthly meetings that you could attend, where we could have potentially gone in person. So we emailed it out to everyone who we had email contact to. We also sent it out to the advisory board, and we also sent it out to the certain legislators who were tied to this information, because we felt as though these are people who have have demonstrated some vested interest in wanting to know what's going on with social equity here in Massachusetts. And we thought that having an analysis done in this perspective, where there are no ties to any other entity, but it's actually giving a perspective and an analysis through the lens of people who are in the program and who have experienced the very injustices that you said that you want to address, and articulating it in this way, in a way that is digestible and understandable to them, because this is the work that they're doing. We thought, okay, great, we're going to hear from someone, particularly at the commission, because they're the ones charged with drafting the policies and procedures and whatever habits of practice that are pushed forth. And the way the recommendations are written, the majority of them are already formed in a way that they could implement, and then whatever isn't opens up the opportunity for conversation with people who have been able to intellectualize what's been going on and speak their language and say, hey, look, this is what this is what your charge is, this is what you've done, this is the outcome, and this is how you can rectify it, and these are the reasons why you should rectify it. So the response after that, it was silence. And then as it started to get traction, because we're like, okay, wait, no one's listening to this, and we shared it publicly on various social media platforms, and we started really pushing that. And all of a sudden, there were certain folks who did reach out to us. We actually were invited to the Cannabis Advisory Board and presented to them our PIES program, which really fleshed out our second recommendation in a way that is it's really comprehensive, and they were receptive of it.
Can you real briefly, Cynthia, describe the Cannabis Advisory Board? Because I think maybe some people in my audience aren't aware that there is even an advisory board. So who makes up that advisory board, and what's their purpose?
Yeah. And the reason why folks aren't really aware of them is because they don't have much teeth, folks would say. However,
who are they?
Think about who are they, there are 25 members. All 25 were appointed by the Attorney General, Treasurer, and the Governor. 10 of them are folks who are, they call them, I think the term is ex officio. These are people who have seats that are tied to organizations that they wanted represented. So you have the Massachusetts Patient Alliance, you have representation from the ACLU, you have representation from various organizations like that. But then you have another set of experts, 5 of them, and of those 5, I think 3 of them are tied to dispensaries. And then you have business experts, you have representation from the Minority Business Association, you have someone who was identified, and I can name specific names of folks, but someone who's identified as so you have now I said that right. So Horace Smalls is a representative for minorities because of his work that he's done with the community. And then you have Michael Dundas, who was, at the time, he was the owner for one of the dispensaries. I don't remember which one, but one of the local dispensaries here in Massachusetts. You have representation from NETA. You have Kim Napoli, she served as an attorney, I believe, for NETA. She sits on the board. Then you also have representation from Massachusetts, I believe it's called Massachusetts Business Association. Mary, I forgot her last name, and then she brings the voice of other external businesses and just the perspective of best practices when it comes to business.
So who are they advising? So are they advising the governor and to make decisions, and the Attorney General?
This is the Cannabis Advisory Board. So most of the State Department agencies have an advisory board who bring their expertise from whatever sector that they are in and how that sector intersects with that particular agency. So for us, it's going to be the Cannabis Control Commission. And they bring their expertise now, and they provide recommendations on everything from market analysis to regulations to medical decisions. And they submit reports, I think, and the reason why I say I think is because I haven't seen much of what they produce, nor is it something that comes up in the CCC meetings to say, oh, these are the recommendations that came from the advisory board, and this is our response to that. You have certain voices on the advisory board that are a little stronger and more active than other voices, which is why I can't even think of some of the names.
So you guys got some traction, and they invited you to come in to speak specifically about the report, or you guys went in with the agenda?
Specifically about the PIES program.
The PIES program.
Yes, and it aligned with an analysis that they were doing on market participation, and also looking at everything from the current licensing structure, and they had a whole agenda of things that they were looking at, other things with testing protocols and so forth. And so we came in with the PIES program as a solution to address social equity, the equity programs, and promoting the participation and increase in ownership that we're not seeing right now in Massachusetts.
And how was that received? Your
It was well
presentation?
received. So like I said earlier, it was well received. Again, for these folks who they're all coming from their lens. There was some initial questions and wanting clarification as to how would this work, and there was even pushback from. So there was another. I guess I don't remember her role. Chanel Lindsay, but also Chanel Lindsay played a role in the initial legislation, on drafting the initial legislation. So she is also on the advisory board. And so when we presented we call it the PIES program, and we started talking about the incubation piece, there was pushback because, incubation has a negative connotation across the country. People will point to programs like in California or other places and say, oh, it was a failure. And what we stressed with our program, and what we demonstrated in our presentation to CAB, was that there are opportunities when you do analysis to identify where the weaknesses are in these other programs and account for that. And the beauty of what's happening here in Massachusetts and other sectors. So if you look at the airport industry, the Massport project, and where the government, it's mandated that you have a certain number of contracts going to minority businesses. So this concept of allocation is not something foreign to Massachusetts. Maybe some of these other places, or maybe they didn't even think about it. But what we did was we did what's called a SWOT analysis. We looked at the strengths of even the program that we put together, and in comparison to some of these other programs that we just identified. We looked at the weaknesses. One of the weaknesses being that incubation programs don't always have seed funding tied to them. They tend to be short term, and they don't account for, they don't hold the incubator accountable for the success of the participant. And so we took all of those things into consideration, put that together, and presented it to them, and it was well received.
Great. So could we go through, because I read the whole report, and I kind of,
that says a lot.
yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I definitely think there was a lot of repeating themes in a lot of the different components to it. So I kind of took some time, and I took some notes, and I wanted, if it's okay, I wanted to go through it. I got like six like high level points that I felt like defined the report. So the first piece that I thought was interesting was defining the leader, because I think that throughout the report, it was you were asking to have someone represent your community, and I'm saying your community, I mean like the Black and the brown, the people who are hurt by the war on drugs, and you were looking to put someone like that in a position of power so they could have the empathy, the influence, and the background to help bring the equity to the front line of like the priorities, right? And so I guess the interesting thing to me though is that you guys, and again, I'm very young in this industry, and so I'm just getting into the surface, scratching the surface of like, who are the politicians, and who is the community, and the community obviously is divided into many different groups. Who are the big players? Who is the big businesses? Who are the small businesses? You guys jump out at me as leaders, and Mark continues to say he doesn't want to be a leader. And I think in your last 2-hour video that I watched and loved, you guys were also saying, this is not our path. Our path's not to lead. Our path is just to present the information, give you guys, like you mentioned in the beginning of this, is like you want to break it down so people can just like digest it, understand it, and use the information. But I guess for me, I keep coming back to this too, and I think we're sort of piggybacking on a tweet from the CCC today, where they're looking for that fifth seat. They're looking to fill that fifth seat. So if you guys aren't going to do it, because I would love to see you on there. I think I even tweeted that out. I think you would be perfect for a commissioner role, but I'm not gonna push on that because I know you guys want to get into the business, the business side. And
you see, you understand and you recognize that already, that we're here for the business side of it. And
yeah,
the other piece is there are ways to have that voice at the table, to have our voice at the table. Look at what we've done. We've already put our voice out there. And they've demonstrated that they don't want to hear that voice. And so and if you notice in the report, what we call for in terms of someone in such as a commission position, particularly because they're the five positions that are making a lot of the regulatory decisions, someone that not only represents, but is also able to boldly speak out and push the needle and hold everyone accountable for the mandate. And now, if you paid attention, there's someplace in this in the report, I think it's more towards the end though, where we said, even if all five of those commissioners do not necessarily have a full grasp as to what it is, to what social equity is, which they don't.
Yeah, you talked about that. They can't define it, or at least their definitions are all different.
Correct. But the mandate is still the same. And the mandate is actually an outcome-based mandate. And so here it is, you have folks who are in your programs who are looking to move forward in the business sector, who have articulated ways to address the inequity effectively. And we've shared with them that we have additional information, to the point that we've recommended that you convene a task force, because at least in that capacity, we can support your work and still pursue what we need to have happen.
I see that.
When you look at the decisions that are being made, a lot of them favor the multi-state operators, the dispensaries, but you don't have a multi-state operator directly sitting on the sitting on the commission. I say that
tongue in cheek,
right?
So
but let's go with everyone in terms of what they've put out in terms of their position and where they stand right now. And so for us, we're about pursuing a business. We want to ensure that what as Massachusetts, what we have set out to accomplish in terms of full participation, that happens. And that doesn't just happen for us. If you look at the PIES program, it's 100% ownership for everyone who comes through it. And so what it really does is it puts the onus on the community being these dispensaries, the community being the leaders, the commissioners, the regulators, the legislators. It puts the onus on everyone playing their part and putting social equity, putting equity first, the way they said they would, in order to get the legalization through.
Yeah. It's also funny, and I'll just be honest, that it's amazing that in a very liberal state such as Massachusetts that we're in, that this is not getting to even local media, right? I feel like there was maybe one time where I was watching a video with I know it was on WGBH or something. I think Shailene was on there, and man, who was the gentleman's name? I can't think of it for a second, but he basically laid out the numbers for the first year and a half or 2 years of the equity program and said, listen, is it fair to say that this is a complete failure? And of course, Shailene said it's not, and backed it up with fluff. But it's amazing that this is not getting more traction than it should, and I guess I wonder why that is. Is that still the stigma?
Well, part of it is because the key players, as you identified, that are controlling the narrative, there isn't anyone pushing back. Prior to Moore and I coming out with this social equity report and then doing the videos and just flat out saying, no, this narrative is not accurate. No, we are not trying. No, we have not done everything. No, social equity has not gone first. There are different voices out there who are saying, well, I haven't been able to move forward and you're not doing the right thing. But we have really articulated in a way that no one else has, and it goes against the narrative that the key players want to push forward. And you look at the media, folks, when you look at, it doesn't matter which media outlet you're looking at, if you look at who they speak to over the last 3 years, they're constantly tapping into the same people, which leads you to to the conclusion, okay, they reach out to the CCC, who should we speak to about this? And the CCC is like, oh, okay, you can speak to them, you can speak to this other person here. And that's the narrative. And then there's the narrative, the story that they want to tell, and that's what they push. They push forward. And all of these outlets, they also have to answer to sponsors. They have to answer to other people who have an agenda that doesn't necessarily align with it, despite what the public may think is happening. That's not the case. And so even the amount of people who aren't even aware of this report, still, there are people who know the report exists, but they don't know what the contents of it are. And they don't know how within reach equity is. It's not something that's nebulous. It's actually within the scope and reach of Massachusetts based on how we've structured our legislation. It's just incumbent upon the regulators to develop policies and then hold habits of practice in terms of how they execute and assess the policies to meet that.
I just wanted to say that now that I have all this information at my fingertips, I'm gonna be like cutting and pasting it. I don't know if you see any of my activity online, and I don't know how, it's funny because you never really get a sense of, you could look at some of the insights to see how much interaction you get with your posts and things, but like the last couple of weeks, man, I've been like going nuts. And now that I have your links, and actually when the CCC posted their request for applications for the 5th seat, I just cut and paste the first the number one comment from there about the leadership. I don't know if you want to see that, but I was like, because when they were looking for, what's that?
I hadn't seen that yet, and part of it is because I've just been, we have been working in terms of making sure that all the comments that we want to submit to the CC, we get them out there, and then everything else that we have going on. But I actually saw your tweet when we were opening this up to start the live this evening. I did see your tweet about your retweet about the 5th seat position, and prior to that, we actually didn't know.
So it's interesting because they posted that back in May, and
correct, and they hadn't been filled.
Yeah, and so we've had a little bit of a back and forth with the young jerks, right? Especially Mike Crawford. I bust his balls all the time. I can't help myself. But I knew
that's good.
Yeah, I feel like it's friendly, but who knows? I don't care how he interprets it. I'm having fun doing it. But the point is that when he was on our show early in May, he told us about filling out an application and applying for that seat. And I remember when it came out, and he had said again on his show that he completed the application and submitted it. When I saw that today, I DM'd him and I was like, hey, why is this being reposted? So I'm wondering, and his feedback was somewhat unique because, and I couldn't find I went back to their older posts, and I was like, I wanted to compare the two applications or the two requests to see if they changed any language. And I feel like I couldn't find it, by the way, they deleted it. But what I remember being different was the, I think the reason why Mike was applying was because Grant was going to, but there was this restriction about too many people of like the Democrat Party. So there was like this you couldn't have more.
The party restriction, correct.
For the party restriction,
have more than 2 people of the same party on the control and on the cannabis control, and there are already two or is it 3 Democrats that are on there, and so you have to either be independent or Republican, correct?
So and I'm interested just for your eyes, because now that you say that, that's exactly what it was. That was what it said, but it could be different this time. I wonder. I almost think that they changed that restriction, and I don't know. I don't know if that's for sure. And I'm not trying to like set up some conspiracy, but it didn't look the same. It almost looked like they changed that language. It was right in the beginning. So it's not like you have to look far down the application process. It's like it's set up right in the beginning of the application. And I was like, wait, that's weird, because I feel like now it says 3, where I think before it said 2. Like you couldn't have 3 Democrats. You had to have like 2 and 2 and I don't know, 1. I don't know. I could be wrong.
And so, again, it's important that anyone who's looking at the actions of the regulatory body use that level of keenness and assessment as to, okay, wait, why is this coming out again now?
Yeah.
And why are they only putting a 2-week window to it when they still haven't filled from the what happened to the pool of applicants that came in May? And why is it that it's taken them this long to reissue it? Did they interview folks and it didn't work and they're reopening it? Is this for an upcoming position and so forth? So again, these are just the thoughts that I had from reading your little tweak just to get to open this up, and I haven't seen the application itself. However, again, when changes like that happen, you wonder, are they making that modification because they have a candidate in mind and they need the language to be to allow for that candidate to qualify?
See, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess what you're saying, because now my lens completely shifted, right? So I was in the mainstream when I first started this show 6 months ago with my co-host, who's on a boat in Maine. I can't get him to come back. He's having too much fun. He has a place up there. He talks about it all the time. So more power to him. But
now's a good time to be there.
It's true. So we started just kind of like going with the flow, right? Talking about all the popular points, hooking up with the popular people, the people that were promoting equity. That was something that was interesting to me just because of my public health background. So I caught on to all these people. And then just little by little, I was questioning things. I was like, this doesn't sound right. These numbers don't sound right. This doesn't look right. And that's when I found you guys. And so that's the thing, now my lens is through that filter of, I don't want to say doubt, because government to me is shifting no matter what. There is no phase of government that doesn't have some level of, shadiness or just like gray, right? Like, to be a politician, it's very difficult, I think, to be straight and narrow. I think people always are trying to appease different. I don't know. Like that's my perception of politics, is that, it's never an individual. It's an individual, and there's other people supporting that person. So you're always trying. You've got whispers are in your ears all the time. I don't know. I don't know a lot of politicians, but at least that's my feeling. So
our goal is always to get folks to really start to think of things objectively, because if you go with the popular crowd, then you're going to also follow the narrative, and you dumb yourself down to thinking independently and thinking critically. And that's one of the things that, like you said, you looked at the numbers and you're like, okay, I hear what you're saying. I love what you're saying, but the data doesn't align.
Yeah.
Why is that? And then you go back and folks just want to feel good because they like how whoever's speaking has made them felt. And what we pointed out is, one, you're speaking about our experience.
Yeah.
And there is a mandate on the table right now, legislatively on the table. And we're not meeting that. And not only are we not meeting that, there are reasons why we're not meeting that. And no one's talking about those reasons. One, because it's not comfortable. Two, because no one is forcing them to. And three, because everyone is just going on along with the public narrative.
Yeah.
So one of the things we're really pushing is for folks to think objectively. And part of it, you hear us say this all of the time, is what we're saying is not comfortable, but what we're talking about is not a comfortable topic.
Mm-hmm.
People want to say, oh, equity, yes, we've achieved equity. That's a feel-good goal.
Yeah.
To get to that point, to get to that kumbaya space, is going to require power shifts. It's going to require people who are in power currently to be held accountable. It's going to require listening to the voices that have been marginalized, listen to the voices that have been traditionally silenced or ignored. It's going to require all of those things. And the key players who a lot of the folks see now are comfortable in their position. They're comfortable being looked at, whether you're talking about the commissioners, whether you're talking about the social justice chair, whether you're talking about any of the popular media folks that you've mentioned, whether on social media or in traditional media. They are comfortable in the positions that they've established over the years for their role in legalization. But what we have to get clear is legalization does not equal equity.
So I love that you said that on your last episode, and that really had an impact on me. You said, because I think that may have been one of the comments that's on your on the Facebook live chat, and you said, yes. So this person who holds the social chair, she was a champion for legalization. And I get that, because when I started to ruffle some feathers and trying to talk to some people. People shut me down, blocked me, cursed me out. I'm sorry, the feelings that I would. This is where I love why I recorded, because I completely just lost my train of thought. Let's stop for a second.
We can pause and reset.
Yes. Damn it. I was going somewhere good with that.
Well,
never mind.
The comment was around.
What was I saying?
We were talking about the fact that the legalization doesn't equal to equity. It doesn't mean equity in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So that I guess that's what I was trying to say when I was trying to call out the numbers and talk to people about the equity. The people who have, just like you said, who gained the power from the legalization process. I got that. I don't know if you saw that. I had an exchange with Shailene this week, and it initially started and sparked because she did post something about someone, I'm just generalizing it, but it was like a person in their 30s. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, you should at least stop and listen to them. So that to me said that call to me, because that's where I'm at. That's my generation. These are the people who I identify with. So I felt the need to then start going into some of the things that I was going into, and the feedback I always get is, so you think you got a voice? Where were you 20 years ago in this whole thing? I was like, what the fuck does that matter? Yeah, I wasn't even here. I wasn't legal 20 years ago to buy marijuana or even to buy liquor, so I'm here now, and you're saying now because I'm calling you out on the things that I'm seeing that don't make sense. Again, I always try to take the path and I try to speak respectful. That's if there's anything that I've been raised with, it's respect. Anyone, people in general. I don't look at anyone different, no matter what. And whether you curse me, unless you're threatening my family, because I'm gonna fucking kill you. But if you're peaceful and you're loving and you're respectful, I'm not going to treat you any differently, right? And it just felt weird to me that I was just trying to talk, and all of this anger and hate and frustration came back at me, and it just felt total strange. And it always comes from these people who, I think, like you said, who started this movement, right? I wasn't part of this movement when this all started. I can honestly say that I wasn't a part of this movement.
I'm gonna jump in because you said quite a bit, and I don't want to lose all of that. So just a couple of things. One, I am familiar with the thread that you are speaking about, because if I'm not mistaken, that is the thread where Shailene called more and our liars. She called us liars because of the public information that we were putting out. And so, and then to your point about respect is definitely something that people earn, and you can lose it quickly. You can lose it quickly. And just because you're in a position, that doesn't mean you automatically get respect. Like you said, how you treat someone. And so for her to her whole entire stance towards us, going back to the marijuana social equity report, is a reflection of the culture that she brought with her from Colorado. This is about, for her, it's about legalization, and sitting in that social justice chair, there has been a misconception that there's a connection there to justice. Yes, you can talk about justice. Yes, people understand that prohibition and enforcement was harmful, and people can rattle off the data that the ACLU puts out regularly. I think it's biannually, or every 2 years, then that's fine. However, when it comes down to producing solutions, when it comes down to how you treat the very people that you're supposed to be helping, when people start to look at the actions and they don't align, that says a lot about you. And it also pulls into question, for any objective thinker, what is it that you're really looking to accomplish? And can we get the equity that you said, and that the state, you said that you're trying to accomplish, and the state said we're required to accomplish? Can we get that from you? Because when we look at your actions, I'm not seeing that movement in that direction. Regardless of how eloquently you speak before the people and compassionate you may be in terms of appealing to the people, as we said in our conversation earlier, the masses will respond, or everyone's going to respond because of the role that you played in legalization. You've gained a level of confidence there. But can you execute on the space of equity? Can you address mass incarceration? Can you address and challenge the 90+% white ownership in Massachusetts? And your actions don't say that when you're pushing for more white women to enter into the industry, when you're pushing for the support of the actions that will support multi-state operators who are
Yep.
white owners with deep pockets coming into Massachusetts. So yes,
Yep.
I'm going to question you on that. And if your response is to be disrespectful, to lie and say that I'm a liar because I questioned you on something that I understand, and I'm seeing from your actions that aren't aligning with your words that you don't understand, that's problematic, and we're going to call that out. And the goal isn't to shame anyone. The goal is we want to get to the point where we're having conversations to get to results. That's because that's what we're here for. And going back to what you said, this is why we don't want to be in the seat of the commission. Our goal is to open up establishments, and when we open up those establishments, our goal is to support the community, empower the community in a lot of different ways. As I shared with you, we do not just through information but opportunities.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you there, and I forgive me, because we've been on for an hour. I've only gotten through one point, and we're getting into the next, because remember, I got sick, so I don't know how much time you have tonight. So maybe we'll have to make this into a 2-part series. But,
okay.
So, but you were about to hit on to the second point that I thought there's sort of the repeating theme, and something that I read, and something that sort of jumped out at me again is this education and information that you're providing, but without the means. And I think the means is interesting to me. So what's the means? What are the means? So if you have all this information, right? So say you got the PIES program, but because the means, some people just think the means is like money, right? And I know that's a huge component of being a successful entrepreneur in this industry, because it takes a lot of capital to be successful. But what else are we talking about? What's the means?
So the tools to be successful for any business, in addition to capital, is going to be understanding business acumen in this industry, some level of expertise. Everyone that are in these equity programs, each individual who is on the entrepreneurial path, whether you're an EE, are you following me when I say economic empowerment certificate holder?
Yep.
These are the folks who are charged with opening businesses where we are mandated to have 75% of our staff be from disproportionately impacted communities. And then there are social equity participants who are on the entrepreneurial track, which means they want to open some type of cannabis business, whether it's directly or ancillary, or meaning they support a cannabis business. And so navigating that space, so the technical assistance, one of the things at the time this report was written, the CCC had consistently said they cannot provide any further assistance to EEs. Now that doesn't make any sense, because you've provided us, you said you're giving us an opportunity, but now you're not giving the tools for that. Then the second aspect of it, because you brought up education, I'll just say quickly, you can have all the know-how, and these are the rules, the regulations, this is what you have to go do, but then you don't have the legal support, you don't have access to some of the municipality networks that you have to navigate. Trying to pursue a license in Boston is not necessarily the same as trying to pursue a license in Uxbridge. You don't have access to the capital, access to understanding what to review contracts when it comes down to securing real estate. So these are all tools that are tied to ensuring that you are successful, and the PIES program accounts for all of that. That the incubation side really pushes in on the technical assistance for all of those elements, and then this S, which stands for seed, supports the capital necessary, particularly around securing the space and holding on to and accessing. Excuse me, and accessing. I lost my train of thought because I got
that's okay.
Notification.
You were talking about, the communities are different, and then you're talking about the S, the seed.
Oh, the seed. So accessing capital, basically all of the components. And then even E, which stands for accelerating in the industry. Any business that you start, within the first couple of years, you're just really navigating all of everything from your operational processes to any regulatory expectations that you have to meet, to the legal, to the accounting. All of those things you're juggling within the first 4 to 5 years, and that's why they say a lot of businesses fail in that time frame. So if you're just saying your support for EEs and SEs is, we're going to give you some classes on how to run a business, how are you ensuring my success when 2 years from now what did that class that you offered, what does that do for me? Whereas the PIES program encourages a relationship to be forged to support you during those foundational years.
Yeah, I love that. And you also mentioned, I think that, that's something that the Cannabis Control Commission could have put into the PIP plan, right? Or,
absolutely,
that could be mandated, that if a major corporation or anyone who's coming through gets a license and opens up shop, they're automatically mandated to set something up with an applicant through the PIES program, right?
Correct. And this is where the CCC's role is critical, because the positive impact plan gave carte blanche to the establishments as to what they do. No accountability, and there was no expectation as to their program being commensurate with the level of revenue that they are able to generate and pull from these communities, whether it's a disproportionately impacted community or any of the Massachusetts communities. And here it is, as a state, we have a charge. We need to hold everyone accountable to that charge. And so what PIES does is provides this structure and accountability to those establishments. And they're already required to do something. Now we're just telling you how to do it in a way that's going to be effective. It's going to meet everyone's targets, and it's going to promote the goodwill that was used to push the legalization that you're benefiting off of.
Yeah. So, this kind of bleeds into point number 3, and that's okay. I'm working with you here. We're going to get through it all, I think. So the third is the power of the CCC. We know what they're mandated to do, but clearly they're not following what they're mandated to do. But there is a level of power, and you gave that example recently. I think it was actually in this report, but you may have said it in one of your videos. During the whole COVID-19, when things were shutting down, they acted fast, right? And they were very quickly, and they were able to change some significant systems to continue to keep people in business, right? So whatever their motivations were, it was very clear as day that even though they weren't able to open up the recreational facilities to sell marijuana, they were able to keep everyone else in business. The cultivators, the distributors, everyone was still operating, and they were obviously just supplying the medical.
And to correct what you said, they weren't able to open up the retail recreational facilities. That's how creative they got. They were able to say, you know what, we need the recreational cultivators and the recreational manufacturers to provide for the medical. Yeah. And so they were able to demonstrate their authority, because they are an independent agency. As I said, they have the advisory board. They don't have to listen. It's an advisory board. They don't have a board of directors that they have to report to, where you see in some of these other agencies. They are independent. And then when you look at in Massachusetts General Law 94G, Section 4 highlights all of their powers, and it is extensive, the latitude that they have. And it's because, one, they're starting a new industry, they're erecting a new industry, and so they're given latitude to do what they need to do to establish the policies and the procedures that are going to align with what Massachusetts want here. They're doing that. They're not. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say that, one of the again really strong points that you've made is that it's like they've given themselves this enormous flexibility to leverage the law for them to operate, but they refuse or purposely choose not to do it. They almost like they shut all these doors, and they, the new narrative is, oh, where's all these tax dollars? These tax dollars are going to fund the police. Let's get all this energy away from us, and let's talk about defunding the police and all this tax. It's like all that's bullshit, right? I see through that. I was like, that's it's creative. And it takes it, it's they're smart. I mean, because clearly someone else is very smart, telling them this is how they need to spin this. But again, like the power, they're basically saying they have all this flexibility because they demonstrated that when they needed to, but now they're not willing to make the recommendations or do what you're saying to do, which is like the PIP plan. I thought that was amazingly smart, and I think that's part of the Oakland thing, right? Wasn't that part of their? I'm trying to remember where I feel like I've heard this before in one of the other states where they're mandated for every license. There has to be some sort of association with an equity program. Is that Oakland?
That's in Oakland. That's in Oakland, and that was part of their incubator
law.
Their incubator program. And again, we're just talking about just the city of Oakland. Here it is in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has several equity components. One of them being the positive impact plans, the other one being the equity programs. And we've talked about the two different programs. And then there's the overall arching leading mandate, which states for full and equitable participation, particularly for those people, and this is something else I talked a lot about in the report, as opposed to just the communities, but for those people from communities that have been disproportionately harmed the most by the war on drugs and by law enforcement with prohibition. Or law enforcement, because we don't even have prohibition anymore at this point.
No, well, it depends who you're asking.
Well, we still have enforcement, and that
that's prohibition, right? Prohibition is a social construct. It's not just a law. So if people are afraid to buy or to use or to carry marijuana, exactly, that's still part of the process.
And the CCC, I think we talk about this. We mentioned this in the report. The CCC actually also plays a role in perpetuating that stigma in the types of reports and how they talk about cannabis, how they talk about marijuana use, and the little vignettes that they put out, or some of the tweets. The language is still a language with a negative stigma. They, for example, one of the things that they have in the draft regulations that we are debating whether or not we're going to put out in terms of comment is they want to say that the label's unsafe for children. Well, that's not true. What about all the children that use marijuana for medical purposes? So, we have over-the-counter drugs and even prescription drugs that have ways of labeling, keep out of reach of children without, or seek a physician, etc. So it's these minute details that go over a lot of people's heads, but they still feed the subconscious.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. So let's get to the next one. So the fourth point that I thought was very interesting is the expungement, right? The erasing of people's records. And you mentioned this in the report too. So would you mind speaking a little bit about expungements and how that's not a helpful solution?
So first of all, expungement of what? The crimes done against the victim. That's what we're talking about. Expunging the crime done against the victim. And the way that it's being, the story that's being told around it and how it's being sold to the public is, we're doing a service for this individual so that now they can go out and go get a job to potentially work in a dispensary that's owned 90+% by white folks. So it doesn't get at the trauma. It doesn't get at the time loss, the opportunities lost. And so then Massachusetts hasn't even taken the criminalization, the laws off the books. So this is where the repeat comes in, because you've erased everything that you've done, but you haven't taken the laws off of the books that created that. And so now this is where you get the mass incarceration 2.0. If you follow the news lately, there's been an uptick in terms of people, the crackdown that's happening on with marijuana violations. And they're not just being given fines; they're being arrested, and there are a lot of people who are still being targeted in the communities, and it's not even making the news. That's how we still have disproportionate arrest rates here in Massachusetts.
Cynthia, I'm going to pause you for 1 second. Your mic changed, and I'm not sure if that was something that got unplugged or did anything change on your side?
I didn't change anything.
Oh, so I hear you differently in my headphones. So I just wanted to make sure that you're still connected. Can
you still hear me clearly though?
I can hear you clearly, but it's very faint. So that's what I mean. It sounded like something got changed. You're good. All right.
I don't know.
I'll just listen closer.
And I'll speak up a little bit if that helps also, because I want to make sure it's clear. When we're talking about expungements, it doesn't account for the damages. It's not restitution. And so in the report and some of this you shared, it erases the record of the crime done to the victim, but there was no quantifying of the loss that the victim experienced. And what does expungement do for someone who experienced the war on drugs 20 years ago? So you expunge the record. They've spent the last 20 years of their life having to navigate, perhaps whether the record, they may have been in jail, arrested, whatever happened, it happened 20 years ago. Fast forward to now, they had to navigate through the trauma, through the opportunities that they lost, the time, all of those things, and expungement does nothing for them. Now, there are people that say, yes, expungement will help them because, they're just trying to get a job right now, and this just happened 2-3 years ago. That's something different. And so we're not saying that expungements shouldn't be offered. What we're saying is, first, people need to be compensated for the crime done against them. Secondly, because once money is attached to it, then we have a trail. So you can go ahead and erase that now, because now we still have an element or a way to track what happened, the injustices that happened, and then the effort made to ameliorate that. I can keep going on and on for
I want you to keep going, but again, I'm going to what I'm going to do. If you don't mind, if you still have the time, do you still have time?
Yes. It's okay.
So I was gonna stop and then restart it again, just because, like I said, I can't tell if it's just my headset or if it's something going on with the software, and I don't want to lose you. You know what I'm saying? Testing.
Can you hear me clearly?
Oh, that's beautiful. You're back. I don't know what sometimes the software just wigs out on me, so I don't know what that was about. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, yeah, no, we're good. We're fine.
How are we doing with time?
We're fine. We're fine.
Okay, cool.
Keep tracking.
Did you have a final thought on the expungement, or did you feel like you got your thoughts across?
I don't even remember what.
Let's move on. I'm gonna get to my last 2 points then. So the next section is basically about regulation. So we hit on that just a little bit, but the plant needs to be accessible. That's a known fact, right? And accessibility is a lot of things, right? So it's location, it's price point. Yep. And you spoke, I think, a little bit about the transition, and I was actually interested. I don't really, I wish maybe you could give me some insight on this, but how do you transition from the illicit market to the legal market? So if you're, I guess you hit on that a little bit in the report, but I don't really understand it. Can you expand on that?
Sure. And I know everyone uses the term illicit, but this is the traditional market. So in the traditional market, how would you transition? It would be by obtaining one of these licenses. Or if you say, for instance, were really successful at growing certain strains, you could potentially partner and work in a dispensary that's opened up. And so that's one of the ways to transition. If you are a consumer and you have traditionally bought in the traditional underground, whatever market, now you can go into a dispensary. So these are ways to transition from the traditional market to the legal market, right? What we're saying here in this report is they have not taken into account the different things that need to be in place. So why would I or anyone go into the legal market, into a dispensary where you're being price gouged between the taxes and the prices that the dispensaries are charging for certain products? And I can't rip it off the top of my head because I don't know them like that. But what I do know is it's significantly higher than what folks are used to paying in the traditional space. Mm-hmm. If you are wanting to open up a recreational store because folks have traditionally come to you for product, and you know how to get the product from certain cultivators. The cost, the level of resources that are necessary to open up a retail space is astronomical. So they haven't made it accessible. And even with the delivery license right now, if you've been following that, there's been a lot of pushback because here it is. Here they're pushing a model that is not economically viable.
Yeah,
exactly.
I listened to that. I think and their biggest argument, because I watched that I think it was last week, the CCC. I watched you on there too. But a lot of the people that were speaking about the delivery, they have to essentially they can't store overnight. That's a huge problem because then they have to return their products. So they're not set up. Yeah. But they can't they have to, it's almost like they're at bay to the larger corporations that are supplying them. They can't have their own grow. They can't so basically they're just the delivery people, but they can't, it's not sustainable, like you said.
Yeah. And it's not even that they can't have their own grow, because if you have your own grow, then either you're a micro business or you're a cultivator, but they can't even go to the growers directly to get products
wholesale prices, right.
That's cost, what it was. So that then they can turn around and make a profit and erect a viable business. The way it stands right now, between the heavy regulations that they have for the delivery model and then the limitations that they've placed on it, anyone who is using their own resources and leveraging capital to erect this type of business is not going to be in business within a year from now. So that's an example of the CCC not putting regulations in place to support transition. And then there are other folks who engage there are a lot of people who use the product in different ways, whether they're making their own little hair products that they're using in their barbershops or and these are examples of folks that I know of, and they would like to enter into this industry and be able to. They don't need a whole product manufacturing license. Perhaps they just need an endorsement that says you are. We've authorized you to produce this particular product because you're using it in your space, and you've met the whatever regulations they put in place for that. It's not the full blown. You went out, got a host community agreement, et cetera, et cetera.
Is that similar to the bedroom cannabis? Is that sort of what Chief's trying to do with his product? I know that was obviously a little bit more structured because he went through a different program, but is that similar to what you're trying to describe, or not really?
No, not really. And so I guess maybe the difference would be this individual would have full control of, because a lot of folks already have their own little recipes that they're working with individually, and I don't know the full backdrop of the bedroom cannabis. They may have already had their products in place, and going through the accelerated program allowed for them it provided support in terms of on advertising, networking, getting their product on different shelves and so forth. So that's slightly different because their goal is to get their product into the real retail stores. Again, for someone who doesn't want to do a whole line of products, maybe they just have a specific, brownie they know how to make. For them to have to go through the whole process similar to someone that's making ice cream and cookies and candies and a whole bunch of other products. I think that's not equitable. It's not considerate of people that operate in the traditional market. And then the other piece, I think they call them like weekend warrior licenses. Moore talks about this a little bit more than I do, but these are licenses that would allow people to host events. And so now I can host a dinner and you can come to my event. We can participate, we can enjoy, and I may charge for this event because I have a license to charge for events, and I'm licensed by the commission. I submit the application for it, go through whatever processes, submit my products for testing. So these aren't grand, major scale businesses, but these are businesses that are viable and that people in the traditional market currently are operating, and there hasn't been an avenue established for them to do this on the legal side.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying that. I also wanted to get your opinion on the caregiver piece. I know that was also part of the new regulations that they were opening up comments on. So what's your stance? Because I mean, it sounds like to me, if you were opening it up to, what is it, like 10-1 is what they're trying to advocate for. I mean, I was listening to kind of both sides, not being in that side of the market, and obviously learning about this for the first time. It sounded like you did have an opportunity to expand from one patient to more than one patient if you got an endorsement, like you said. But they're trying to do this 1 to 10, which obviously opens up, accessibility to the medication at cost. So the patients can now get cannabis where they're not paying a premium price for it, like if they go to, one of the dispensaries down the street. But what's your theory? What's your feeling about the caregiver thing? I mean, I know Omar's got some experience, but what's overall?
Yeah, and you know what? I would actually invite more to speak on it a little bit more. But so anything that makes the plant more accessible, I think it's great. I think there has been a lot of questioning around, because they also are expanding the square footage. So now you're not limited to the number of plants. You're actually limited to 500 square feet. And just when I think about it immediately, and I think about the majority of people who are caregivers, this is an avenue for average white people to be able to get into the industry as well, and not have to go through the hoop and hoopla. And I need that level of creativity for people, for all people, for those who have been disproportionately harmed as well. I am all for caregivers being able to provide care to their patients. In the traditional market, you would have a caregiver, and I think you had to have the patient had to register that caregiver as their caregiver. And so I haven't the regulations around that piece have not changed. So there's still a level of accountability there. However, who's going to benefit traditionally, who's going to benefit significantly from that? Those who are operating right now. And there's no problem. There's no problem with that. I think that's great. I think there was some recommendation on having opportunities or ways for them to test the products and so forth. And that's important too, but each patient, you build a relationship with your caregiver. It's not the same as running into some dispensary where you don't know the person. It's you build a relationship with your caregiver. Currently in the traditional market, there is a lot of trust amongst caregiver and patient. So the short end of your answer is I'm for the expansion of accessibility to the plant. And anything that does that, and I also want to promote safety, but not at the expense of where enforcement of these safety rules is going to perpetuate disproportionate impact. Right. And so now that the issue becomes enforcement around how those regulations actually come out, and then how it's enforced, who's being checked on and who's not. So we have our own personal experience with the legal caregiver program. So that's the lens that I look at it through. Of course, the more we can eliminate unnecessary laws, unnecessary regulations, the better. However, I do recognize the need for accountability.
So my last point that I want to get to, and I'm happy that we were able to get to this an hour and 30 minutes in, is the definition of success. So it feels like you were trying to offer solutions. But part of the problem is the CCC has never truly defined what success in the program is. I'm going to read this. I think I may have just copy and pasted this, but it says social equity measures exist in the law, but insufficient measures have been created to ensure success. Is that your words? Does it sound like something you would...
like the report? Yeah.
It's from your report. So that spoke to me, because again, it's like, when you're, I'm an athlete, so like it's very difficult to continue to train and push your body to limits without knowing what the end goal is, because then, the system gets exhausted, you lose focus, and then you lose traction. And then similar to what the CC is doing right now is you're just widening the definition of what success means, right? Like you talked about this, opening up the groups to not only just include the brown and the black people who are harmed, but you're talking about like now women and veterans, which again, I support 1000%, but it's not the definition of of what the mandate says, right? And I feel like that's what you keep coming back to, which is what I think I love about the report the most, is that you keep redirecting all of this back to, you're supposed to be doing this, and you did define this in the law, but you're not defining this now, and none of you can actually talk about what this actually means. So what's success? So that has to be, you have to be able to focus on that. Laser's got to be pointed to that in that direction, otherwise we're lost. So what in your mind, how can you define this? Because it's a very difficult thing to do, especially with all these different areas that I just pointed out. We're talking leadership. So how do you define success in leadership? How do you define the success in accessibility and in power?
The first place they can start with is success in ownership.
Right.
So
just the numbers.
Let's start with the data first. If we're going to start any place, start with the data, and then we can start looking at the quality of that afterwards, right? However, if the charge is to promote full participation, particularly for those who have been harmed, all of the things that we've talked about on our call, on our time together, has been different elements of that. So holding the people who are tasked with doing this accountable, and ensuring that they're listening to those who have been harmed, ensuring that the programs that they're putting in place are actually supportive, and not only providing education and information, but providing tools so that they can enter into the market, they can open successfully, and they can operate a business. And then one of the things that you did not bring up, but we talk about in the report, is the type of data that they're releasing. Mm-hmm. And right now, the data in the report, I don't think it says it, but it's actually mandated in the legislation that the data show the diversity of ownership and also of participation, and they have not done that. And it's important, if you have a specific target audience, then that's the data that you need to be focusing on. Yeah. And so at that point, you can compare. If we say Black and brown men have been 4 times as likely to be arrested for marijuana possession or for marijuana drug offenses, than any other population, then we need to set up a goal. And we said we want to ameliorate that. We want to correct that. We want to provide restitution. So then our goal needs to tip the scale to balance that out. And there is, I think you said that, I think you may have said that it's hard. It's not. What makes it hard is the fact that it's uncomfortable. It's not the thing. The tasks aren't hard. It's uncomfortable for the people who have to say, I have to step aside because I have to let this person who has been targeted simply for the color of their skin, and they have been engaging in this plant the same way I have, and they have been criminalized, demonized, traumatized for their participation. I have to step aside and allow them the opportunity to be made whole and brought to the forefront. And that level of power shift is not comfortable. Mm-hmm. Is it hard? It's hard because people are like, there's a level of animosity there. Like, why should I do that? Yeah, I know you were criminalized. Yes, I know the law did this to you. Yes, I know enforcement of the law, it has not only has been unjust, but continues to be unjust. However, that's uncomfortable for me to step aside to allow you to be pushed forward. Some people particularly people who refuse to acknowledge that level of disparity of treatment, then want to look at it as some type of handout, when in fact it's not a handout. Mm-hmm. Every entrepreneur who's looking to enter into this industry still has to work significantly hard to erect a successful business. It's not just, a lump sum of money being turned over to them, which is something that should also be considered as a collateral consequence for the damages that were done to those harmed the most by the war on drugs. But we haven't even gotten to the money part. We're just talking about the opportunity and accessing that opportunity to the point of inclusion. And that means some folks have to step aside. And it's not saying that you can't enter. It's just you can't enter this route. We've established this route specifically for these people. And what we're seeing here in Massachusetts is they're opening that gateway for everyone. Every decision that they make to dilute what constitutes social equity, every day that they decide they're going to move forward and pretend that they don't know what social equity in cannabis means, when in fact they do. If you read and this is one of the recommendations that we're actually going to put up. I'll read the actual definition. If you read, this is in the report too, if you read how they talk about social equity, you can deduce that the definition of social equity in the cannabis industry would then be to make accommodations for those most affected by the war on drugs, i.e. Black and brown people who have experienced the greatest harm of the mass incarceration agenda of the war on drugs. And this is, you could literally lift it out of the Massachusetts Social Equity Report. We just don't say that this is what the definition should be. It literally is combining the problem that the CCC has identified and then what social equity is supposed to do. What they don't do is say that social equity is going to do that to this problem. That's where the disconnect comes, and it gives this illusion of a loophole or a space to include everyone else. But when you do that, you no longer are reaching your goal. You're simply shifting where you're going, where the attention is going. And so that's what we want to see in terms of success. We want to see the data. It's not just an exceptionalism. Right now, one of the things that you may see, especially with the social justice chair, she may point to an individual. If you can point to one individual and say that that's success, that's a problem, because you can't point to just one individual and say that was the only individual harmed by the war on drugs. You can't do that. As a matter of fact, Massachusetts hasn't even gone so far as to identify a fraction of the people who have been harmed by the war on drugs. 40% of those who were incarcerated since the inception of the war on drugs were Black and brown people. We don't have 40% participation anywhere in this industry, and definitely we don't even have 10% of 40% when it comes to ownership. So when we talk about success, it's very easy to identify successful metrics. It's the powers that be have to give up their comfortability in order to allow for that to happen.
At least agree and kind of bringing it back full circle, but the person who would best fill that empty seat, who are now applying for, and God knows if it's a fair process or not, but that person would, if there were any trait that we could agree that person should absolutely have, it's to feel uncomfortable sharing space, either in their heart, their mind, or their power, to give back to this group, to this population of people who were truly affected by this war on drugs. And that's, can we agree on that? Would be the,
well, again, this goes back to, it's not the onus is not on just one individual.
I know
the CCC as a whole, the commission as a whole, has a responsibility to pay attention to this population. And the fifth seat that former Commissioner Doyle left open is a very specific seat that they're supposed to, and I don't know what these the requirements are this time around, that they're supposed to be looking for people who have experience with so she had the background in public
financing, or if I was something associated, I don't remember.
So, and in the general laws, they say what each commissioning seat is supposed to demonstrate some experience. And so it's the social justice, there is a social justice chair, and it's not that it's incumbent upon just that individual to exercise this, because they vote collectively. However, collectively, they have to have a commitment and an understanding as to what social equity means, what it looks like in outcomes, and they have to have a collective agreement as to what they're going to do to achieve those outcomes. So the person that does come in, it would behoove them and make sense for them to be someone that has an understanding, because this is one of the areas that the CCC is failing. Their grade is an F- in this area, that they need it would behoove them to have someone that has the capacity to listen and create change on bold measures that need to happen.
Damn. I feel like this is a master's course right here.
Well, we want to give this information out, but the goal is to see the success that you and I have just talked about. That's what we want to see happen. And we want to hold the people who are responsible for that accountable for that. And the more we talk about it, the more this information is out, the more, like you say, people have the opportunity to objectively think and not just be led by those who deem themselves shepherd of the folks of the
Yeah.
flock. The more we have of that, the greater the chances are we will see the outcome. It's tangible. It's within reach.
Yeah. No, I mean, if there's anything that at least that I gained from this conversation, it's that you absolutely clarified some very specific points for me that I know that I can carry with me into my future discussions and dialogues and communications with people, especially, you know, through Twitter or through this vehicle right here. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity. I think we appreciate the support that you provided, not just to us, because you are, by giving and offering this platform where you engage to learn, engage to understand, engage to know the perspective of anyone who is, you know, you speak with. I think that offers people this opportunity to think independently and not have to rely on just the narrative that is being flushed in the mainstream media. And so I appreciate it, because this is not, it hasn't made it to mainstream yet. And the goal is that hopefully it does.
Well, again, I love and appreciate you guys. So I can't wait to have another future conversation with you. And so I'm here with you, man. So that's great. I really I'll keep following you, keep watching your videos. Do you want to plug any of your stuff, web addresses or anything right now?
I want to plug you more. You want to come?
Is he there?
He just walked by.
Let me say
so
hi. Is he going to come on or no?
Hold on. Well, let me do a plug for Mass Mother Mary, www.massmothermary.com. This is where we house a lot of our a lot of the information that we're sharing, specifically right now, the Massachusetts Marijuana Social Equity Report. We have a significant amount of information. It's just having the capacity to churn this all out in digestible ways for the public. We also have marijuana, Massachusetts Jumping Jim Crow for Cannabis. This is Moore's book. And I think one of the amazing things I love about his book is the insight that it gives. If you want to talk about a report giving you the lens of people who have experienced the war on drugs, this really goes into his personal experience since a child. And let's be clear, we talked about my background and so forth. That wasn't my experience, you know. And to try to fathom what it's like to be at 14 and to be, you know, deemed a criminal just because of the color of your skin, and then how you had to navigate and the different things that you see happening now and still being criminalized. I think it's a really powerful story in terms of his personal experience that a lot of people can glean from. And then to come here in the Massachusetts space and to see, as you said at one point, Massachusetts considers itself progressive. However, that's not what's actually happening. That's not the experience for everyone here. So I definitely put a big plug for that one.
I will.
And you can access that on the website as well. And then, you know, continue to follow us, support. We are looking for people who want to partner with us, whether it's through sponsorship, whether it's through lending their expertise, whether it's through helping promote some of these changes that we want to see. So, and the fastest way to reach us is massmothermary@gmail.com, or on any of the social media platforms. We have control of Mass Mother Mary, which is MASSMOTHER, and Mary is spelled MARI.
Got it.
Thank you for that opportunity.
Excellent job.
Are you come? It's okay. Don't worry. Yes, we're wrapping up. Yes, and you can come like that.
What's going on?
What's up, big guy?
Did it from the phone.
Yes.
Yo, you're making me look bad. You're posting these videos every day. You freaking like jumping over chairs and kicking things.
I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be here till day 300.
I was gonna ask you. So what's the goal with that? Because you're numbering them. You're at like 17. So what's going on with that?
I don't know. The goal hasn't fully developed, but they said I was too negative. But I'm real. I have a lot of positive things about myself that I do every day.
That's true.
One of them is training. So, you know, in the yoga and stuff. So, I mean, just to get it, how else do we get the message out? They want me to be positive. So I just put the social equity. I put the PAS program to it.
Who's saying to you you're too negative? What's that? You mean that's coming from?
That's people. I mean,
you know, you hear things from the grapevine.
Yeah.
Despite being blocked, I'm sure you realize.
Yeah, they say a lot of stuff, but I mean, it's what you choose to adhere to, but that's not what I want attached to me. I want people to still get good energy, but they definitely have to understand that this is real, you know.
So I was saying to your wife in the beginning, I love your dynamic, the two of you. Like
Mhm.
it's I'm like drawn into it. Like, and again, I think it's for a number of different reasons, but I said it's like you guys are the yin and the yang of each other. She
Yeah.
balances you out with the soft. You got the hard, but like, and I was saying the part that I love the most is when you're all charged and you're doing your thing, and it's like my heart rate's pumping. I'm like, I'm with you, and then she goes, hun, she takes you down a couple notches, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like it's so sweet.
What people don't realize about me, I'm a Gemini, so I have my Kanye West moments all the
Oh,
time.
there you go.
I'm like, damn, shit.
Are
did I
you
go
are you a
overboard?
musician too? Did you music, or you just do martial arts?
I do music. I'm an artist, you know.
Oh man,
I do music. I don't do an instrument though. My
yeah.
daughter does
So when you say, what is she playing? What's she doing?
piano,
Nice,
and
beautiful,
she draws too. And she does spoken word.
excellent. Yeah, we got a little bit into how you guys are raising your kids, and I think you guys are doing an incredibly amazing job, especially with all this stuff that's going on right now. But you guys clearly you guys got the right stuff. So
Yeah, well, my
keep
wife's
it
a teacher.
going.
She was a teacher for forever. How long
Yeah.
were you teaching for?
Forever.
She's still teaching. She told me
I'm
that.
still teaching.
She's still,
Yeah.
she just gave me a lesson. I didn't charge her any. I feel like I'll Venmo
That's why I
you.
try to tell everybody I'm serious about that Ask Cynthia segment. We need to do an Ask Cynthia because they could just ask you all the questions in the world. Because I mean, especially about this. I mean, a lot of
Well,
things.
you both have this nonstop thing about yourselves that I'm truly attracted to. You know, it's like whatever you guys are pushing, man, I'm hungry for it. So I
That's
love
what's
it.
up.
So keep going, guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Again, I just wanted to say this, but like I was hesitant to retweet some of your stuff in the beginning because I don't know, Mar, maybe it was because of some of the political cartoon stuff, and I was still young enough in this to just sort of I'm just figuring it all out. But
Mhm.
but man, it's I think aside from that, the videos I can't get enough of. So I feel like you guys have found your swag with that. That
Yeah.
works. That works for me, and I know it's working for other people. I don't know how many views you guys get, but I'm going to continue to watch those and also retweet them because I think they're phenomenal. I think it's it's education, but it's also entertainment, which is important, especially when we're all locked down. We're all locked down right now, and I know, and I'm not taking away from the seriousness of the issue and the topics and the stuff that you guys have been through, but like it's got a great kind of like balance to it. So I don't know.
Yeah. I have a video that I'm gonna release. But they actually started making memes and pictures of us, not memes, but like they started making memes, I guess, right? Yeah, memes.
Yeah.
Pictures of us. It would, like, hey, this person sold out, this person is this. So they started doing it. They started first. And then so
I was like,
with the political stuff, the cartoon
yeah,
stuff.
with the memes, with the cartoon.
So,
Yeah.
Came from
they were doing it to Chief in Cambridge.
Yeah, like
they
put a clown face.
They were doing a whole bunch of stuff to him.
This,
so
awful.
We were like, wow, they're gonna do that to us. Well, this is what I'm gonna do to them. So I expected, but
just do it better.
Yeah.
So don't, I get to get certain people's attention, you have to pretend to be sometimes someone that you're not, but don't take too much away from who you are, because I feel like that's the piece that people are going to eventually lock onto. Don't try to pretend, be you, but I get it. Like you gotta, that's politics. You guys you're in an area of politics, and that's what I'm trying to say. You gotta sometimes wear a little bit of a costume, but you guys are awesome.
Yeah, that's why I say I'm not really good for politics, because I don't pretend, but I have so many different facets. So one minute I'll be talking like a professor, one minute I'll be, back in the 90s in the hood,
Yeah, but but you know what? That's the only politician that I'm going to vote for. So, because otherwise you just get like you said, you guys talk about the status quo a lot in that report. Status quo comes up all the time. I'm not status quo material. I don't do status quo. So and
we can tell you're here having this conversation with us. It says a lot, especially early. I consider this early on, and like you said, just how you reached out and was really supportive and even offered more that platform to share his experience. That says a lot. It's status quo is safety for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's
And so,
comfortability. You talk about comfort.
yeah, exactly. It's safety, it's comfortability. And you're right, it's actually more comfortable than safe, because it's actually dangerous for some people, but they know the landscape of it, and they're like, I don't want to push back on that. So
I mean, especially
we
if they
push
have,
back a lot.
yeah, because we had no power position. So these people had everything to gain by ignoring us, and everything to, gain by going with the status quo.
Yeah.
Everything to lose by listening to what we talked about, something change.
All right, guys, I'm gonna stop this one. I'm having so much fun. I could keep going, but I can see the clock, and I know I still have to go upstairs, and my wife hates when I wake her up. So it's get. What was that?
Well, we actually have another call actually in a second. Yeah. So it's not over for us.
There you go. Well, you guys continue to make the magic.
Yeah, we're going to be putting out some of the things that we submitted to the CCC. So maybe
Cool.
we can message you that, and then you can do a quick tweak to it and submit your own version in terms of supporting, equity moving forward during this public comment period.
All right. Well, guys, again, thank you so much, Cynthia, for your time. Mar, great to see you again.
Yep.
All right, guys.
You too. Tomorrow morning, working out.
All right. I'll be watching it. Take care, guys. Love you. Bye.
What is this?
Is it over?
We're running out of time.
I don't want to hear your excuses.
No, it's not fair.
Where'd all the finals go?